Hey everybody. Recently, we decided to um, basically update or change our shared parameters and our parameter naming in general. And this really is going to be a complete overhaul of our shared parameter structure, our file, the way we apply them, naming the whole works. And as many of you know, I do a lot of custom add-in programming for Revit. And a lot of that entails assigning parameter values, a lot of them custom parameters or shared parameters to different values, or getting information to and from those parameters within the Revit environment. Um, so we were aware of what that was going to mean, but the point being that now we have a lot of different locations to change parameters for. So I started looking at a way that not only can I fix it now, but can I eliminate the potential of this happening again in the future if we were to jumble it up another time, or just as we continue through, if we want to adjust something or something doesn't quite work for us, or we want to be able to maybe leverage it against different templates that maybe don't quite follow RDG standards. Um, and so I started thinking of a way how I can leverage an external file format of some kind. In this case, it's going to be an XML document to be able to plug that information and almost map to parameters that are embedded in the code versus the actual parameters inside of a Revit model. So just going to work through this example really fast here, and just to kind of show how it works, and then we're actually going to jump back into the code. And I'm going to kind of walk through how I've gone about doing it. But this example here is just really simple. Um, I have walls. I have a parameter that's called wall height. It's just a yes, no, and the code behind here, all it's doing is checking the wall unconnected height, and if it's more than 8 feet, then it is going to check the box. If it's less than 8 feet, it's going to say no. So here we go. If I just click this super fast, you can see, okay, these here that are scheduled, everything that's 8 feet or less got deselected, and then everything that was taller than 8 foot has now been checked. So really straightforward, super simple. That's really literally all it does. But what happens if we came through and we said we wanted to adjust what that parameter was, and say it was wall height, and now let's make it just new wall height, something really simple. I'm going to hit OK there and hit OK here. Now we can see the new wall height is the parameter, and it is currently checked. But if I make these two walls that are tall back here, if I only make them 7'6" tall, now they jumped up here, but they're still checked. So if I were to rerun this, they should adjust, but they don't, because that parameter can no longer be associated with that. So normally we'd have to go back into the add-in, we'd have to change this, we'd have to adjust the parameter that it's reading from to get it to work, or just not change the parameter at all inside the Revit model. But with this easy fix, actually what I can do, this is the XML doc that is actually running the mappings behind. So it's really super simple. We just have an overall parent, we have one descendant, and within that descendant, we have two children. So the name here, this is what you're actually going to use in the code behind. So you're kind of tagging that so you know what to map to. And then this would be the parameter value that would actually be the text version or the string version of your parameter inside of Revit. So in this case, I'm just going to take this and I'm going to change this to new wall height. I'm going to say file, save. So that saves the XML file back. Now here, I can go run this. You can see it still doesn't work. That's fine. We just need to reload the mapping. If I hit reload mapping, you can see that it's still new wall height, still the same stuff over here. However, if I do this, now we can see those went away. So I'm just mapping to that XML document, rereading some information into it, and being able to basically map parameters on the fly to the code behind. So that's just a simple case study on kind of what it does or why you'd want to use it. Now, if we jump into Visual Studio here real quick, I can show you how I went about achieving this. So just like you saw in Notepad+, here's the XML doc. In this case, it's just a really simple one. I just have the one parameter that's in there is all. In fact, I probably actually should reload that so I get the newest. So get that. because the version that I modified is actually out in the Revit folder, so it's not going to obviously show up here. But so how we go about doing this? This is just a really super simple add-in that literally does nothing but create the two buttons on the ribbon, one panel, one ribbon, two buttons, and then has a command, one command, and then has the reload. So on startup here, all we do is we have created down below a control param. So it's just a static dictionary of string for both the key and the value. And I've just called it parameter mapping in this case. And then one thing that I always make sure I do is make sure you kind of null that out, make it nullable and start, because sometimes if you don't do that, it doesn't actually initialize itself since it's just a static dictionary. And you actually can't access it right off the bat. I've just had problems with that in the past. So that's kind of the short one-liner there that I use to initialize and create the dictionary to start with. Once we've done that, then we have this get parameter mappings. And so what we feed into it is, again, we feed into it the parent, the descendant, the name, and then the parameter values, the two children. In this case, you can see parameters here aligns with this, and then mapping is the descendant, and then the two children are both name and parameter. So I just have used those. Those are all just string parameters that get sent to this get parameters mapping function. And then once you get down here, then again, all we're doing is we're just initializing a dictionary to kind of hold our stuff to begin with so that we can set it out later. We can return it. I am using an XML link xdoc, loading it from the path. So this is the path that actually sits within just the system. So you can see here, it's just the program data Autodesk Revit add-ins 2022 parameter mapping. So it just sits base level within that file, same place the add-ins file and the actual class library sit when they get actually built and saved out from there. Once we've read the doc, we've loaded that in from that path, then all we do is we iterate all the descendants. So in this case, if you had, parameters would be the top level. So if you wanted to do this with other parameters, you would just copy this information down and just have the mapping, the descendant replicated within the different children underneath it. So we're going to go through basically just every descendant that happens to be the mapping underneath parameters. And within each descendant, we are going to add the name child and the parameter child to our dictionary. So that's what's going to give us our mapped name and then our parameter. So after all that, we just return a dictionary, which is what's set back up here equal to our basically our global variable, if you will, our static global parameter mapping parameter. So that's kind of the first step. And this happens just on load. So as soon as Revit loads, it's looking for that XML file and it's reading that and it's loading it off the bat. Once we're there, once we have that mapped, then say our command that's going to go look for the wall height and try to apply some of that information, we start doing things with it, right? At that point, we are wanting to look up this wall height param, which you'll note is what we had here is the name. So I said that was the thing we're going to tie it to in the code behind. So we've got that tied here. We've got that plugged in as a variable or as a parameter to this map.find method. This is like really easy, and I just put it in its own class to be able to find easily, and then within its own method to kind of just make it nice and concise when I see it in code instead of it being something that's kind of a long linear thing. So if we were to just jump over here, this is like so easy and so short. There's just this one method within the map class, and literally all we're going to do is going to do a try get value on that dictionary that we created based on the name that we feed it. So what we're using as that kind of static descriptor, and then we're just going to get out the parameter value or the string value that we read from the XML document, and we're going to return that. If for some reason you don't find it, it's going to return a null. Now, my code currently, I have not tried to accommodate any null values. I didn't do any if then is kind of things to just simplify what I'm doing here, knowing that I was going to get what I was looking for. And I wasn't that concerned, but I would definitely recommend if you're doing this, either don't return a null or make sure you're accommodating that on the return side. So this is kind of like basically where all the magic happens. This really short little method here just returns a value from the dictionary based on whatever you send it. So in this case, if it is over the 8-foot tall based on this parameter, whatever that maps to, it just sets the value to 1 or checks the box. And then the other way around, if it's less than 8 feet, then it just sets it to 0 or unchecks the box inside of it. So this map.find and then passing the name of the mapped parameter is all we're using to be able to do that. So that's what makes it work. The one last little piece here is just the reload, and all I do there just have another external command. Again, all it does is just sets the static control dictionary to whatever new information comes. So we're not appending to, we're just literally completely overriding what that dictionary looks like when we reload that. So you can change, 1 or 12 parameters within that, and you're going to get all of them updated as soon as you do that. I initially started off doing that, so it would update on synchronize, but I found it better to actually create a custom button to be able to reload those, kind of hot swap them on the fly instead of having to synchronize to get new values. Just because there may be things you're kind of trying to test out back and forth and not have to synchronize things or results before you actually been able to run them against the new parameters. So really simple way to just reload them. So here it's just the map.find. That's a really simple method here to try and get a value out of that. And then the whole thing, looks like that. So here we've got 4 classes, 1 XML doc, and maybe a dozen methods at the most to make this thing be able to map to parameter values that are external to Revit. So if you want to adjust things along the way, you can do that, or even if you're working with different companies or different templates, you would be able to effectively map different parameters to different functions, but still be able to leverage what they're doing and not have to adjust the code behind to accommodate that. So I wanted to share that. I thought was kind of a cool way to be able to do it and kind of remove parameter values of being so finicky within the code behind when you're doing add-ins. So yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And hopefully this helps somebody not struggle as much as I did with having to change up every parameter embedded in an add-in suite. All right, thanks everybody.